Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition.
It's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Systems of oppression fueled by hate, held up by a lie we can't escape. Humanity, a history of tragedy. Does it have to be the future of us all? Hear our prayer, hear your people, turn our hearts to you, make us whole again. Hear our prayer, hear your people, turn our hearts to you, make us one. Power, struggles, fear, and shame. Will the story always be the same? Will we ever be the people we are meant to be? Does this have to be the future of us all? Hear our prayer, hear your people, turn our hearts to you, make us whole again. Hear our prayer, hear your people, turn our hearts to you,
Good morning, Crosspointe. Glad you're here. I'm going to sing a song called Breathe Love. And as I sing, I want us to think about not just ourselves and our own breath, but I want to think about the indiscriminate gift that God has given each of us, every living thing, of breath and life. In fact, I've changed the words to the song a little bit. It was written in singular first-person perspective with a lot of I's and me's, and I've changed it to we and us because I want us to remember, it's so important to remember that we're part of the whole and that we find our place there, and that we share the gift of life and love with everyone, no exceptions. It was breath that filled our lungs, and every breath we breathe in love, we breathe in life, we breathe in you, God. So take a breath, breathe in deep. Listen now to your heartbeat, every heartbeat. We breathe in you, God. Oh, the beauty of this love that holds us all together. The wonder of this land, the hearts that you have nurtured. Oh, let us breathe love. We have a home, a sign of comfort. We have a chance to love each other, one another, to love like you, God. Oh, the beauty of this love that holds us all together. The wonder of this land, the hearts that you have nurtured. Can we know this love that you have offered? Oh, let us breathe love. Can we know this love that you have offered? Oh, let us Let us breathe love.
Hey, good morning, Crosspointe. This is Jonathan, and it's really good to be able to be with you this morning. Although, if I'm being transparent, I think today, especially, my great preference would be to just be able to see each other in person. Just feels like, I don't know about for you, but for me, it feels like one of those days when I would really prefer to pass out some hugs to people and receive some hugs from people and just look one another in the eye and be present with one another. With everything going on in our world, it just, I wish that could be the case, but we know that wisdom doesn't let us do that right now, and that's okay. So I'm still glad for this way that we can continue to link arms and this way that we can continue to engage with one another. I don't have a lot of updates for you this morning, but I do have a few things that I want to point you to. On the heels of last week's service, we wanted to provide everyone a part of the Crosspointe community with just a list of anti-racism resources. Now, if you've been a part of the Crosspointe community for any length of time, you know that this isn't a new conversation for us, that we've been trying to be heavily engaged in these types of conversations and education and resources for years now on racial and social justice. But we also recognize that this is a time when a lot of people are just open to learning more and leaning in more. And so we wanted to provide a list of resources that have been really helpful to many of our leaders on staff at Crosspointe. And so you can go to crosspointe.org/resources, and you can find a list of books and articles and podcasts and movies and TV shows and resources for parents to have conversations with their kids, all sorts of different things you can find on there. But we just wanted to provide that for you. And our hope is that our white siblings among us, especially that you would take some time to lean in and tackle one new resource maybe that you're not familiar with, just to put yourself in a position to learn and to listen, so that we can advocate and lean in and stand with our Black siblings, both inside of Crosspointe and outside of Crosspointe, much better. So I hope that you'll do that. A couple other things to point you to. I want to remind you that after service today, we're going to continue with our online lobbies that we experimented with last week. So right after service, you can jump on a Zoom call. You can find the link in the YouTube description on this service today, or from the email that went out yesterday under the direct links. And yeah, we'd love to just see you so that you could engage with some people, meet some people, maybe have some conversations, debrief a little bit, whatever it is that you want to do. It's just kind of an open space, but we can break people into smaller groups so you can meet some people. And we're happy with how it went last week, so we're going to try the experiment again this week. Also want to let you know that we have 1 week left in our Capture Gratitude project that will take submissions for that. So what we don't want to do is, by focusing on gratitude, is any way try to overshadow or dismiss a lot of the real pain that's going on in our world right now. Because sometimes people can do that, right? Like, especially in church, you can talk about, let's just be happy and joyful and let's ignore the pain that's going on. And man, that's the exact opposite of what we want to do. We want to make sure we are lamenting and grieving and being catalyzed toward action in ways that serve justice for all humanity. And we want to do that really well. But we also want to discipline our hearts and minds to continue to find things to be grateful for in the midst of that, and while being honest about all that pain and hurt. And so throughout your day, what we've been trying to do the last couple of weeks, if you take your phone and you can just capture a picture of something that you're grateful for, whatever that is, and you could either post it on social media and hashtag it with Capture Gratitude, or email that to capturegratitude@crosspointe.org, and we're going to put that together as an art project for our whole community. And so, but this is the last week that we're going to take submissions, and so really encourage you to lean into that this week, and we look forward to how that project will come together with all of us. Also, that this week we are especially focusing on ways to love our students. There's tons going on, continuing to go on every single day at Crosspointe. Things are definitely not slowing down. But this week we are especially trying to figure out ways to celebrate our students who are going through all sorts of transitions into a new grade. So this weekend right now, we've been focused on celebrating 8th graders. And if you have an 8th grader who signed up for that, hopefully you've been experiencing that or will soon, even today. And then next Sunday night, we're hosting an event for 12th graders who are graduating high school, and excited about getting to honor and celebrate them all together. And I think everyone who signed up for that is already signed up and excited about what we're going to be able to do. But then also we want to provide opportunity for 5th graders that are transitioning from elementary school into middle school. And so if you have a 5th grader and you would like to participate in that, go to crosspoint.org/5th grade. Go there and you can find some information about an event we're going to be hosting this Friday night. Would love for you and your 5th grader to participate, and would love to see you there on campus in a drive through kind of a celebration event that we're going to be having this coming Friday night. So for all the different things that we continue to do as Crosspointe, we've been talking about those week after week, so we won't rehash them all today, but I do want to thank you for all the ways you guys continue to contribute and to lean in to help fund what we're doing together, to love and serve people. And if you want to continue to do that, I'd encourage you to go to crosspoint.org/contribute. And you can find all sorts of different ways, whether that's stocks or PayPal or mailing checks or debit cards or credit cards, however you want to do that. Or you can also, as always, you can text the word crosspointenc to the number 77977, and they'll send you a link right to your phone that you can hit with one click, and you can contribute however you want to there. So as we get ready to step into the rest of our service today, I'd love to just take a moment and pray for us. Okay. God, we gather together as a community today with a lot on our hearts and a lot on our minds. And there is a ton of different emotions there. But God, I pray that you would remind us that we are people who are invited to participate with you in your spirit and the resurrection and redemption of all things and the reconciliation of all things. So, Father, would you continue to drive us and compel us and wake us up to ways that we can participate in that all together. God, we thank you for this community, and we thank you for the opportunities that we have to continue to learn and grow and serve with one another. And it's in the spirit of the resurrected Christ that we pray. Amen.
Today we continue our series entitled Stuck, which we named several weeks ago for very obvious reasons, but we couldn't have foreseen all the other things it would come to represent. So today I want to talk about, under the banner of Stuck, some really simple ideas that have application in so many ways, so many levels, but can deceive us into thinking that simple means easy. But it doesn't mean that, because this isn't easy. It's challenging. And I'd like to talk about this through the lens of a couple of different guys. And I want to start with one of my favorite ones in the New Testament, Simon Peter. Peter, by the way, is his nickname. This is a nickname that Jesus gives him. It means rocky, little rock. But Simon, his given name, means, in his own language, he listens. The little rock who listens, maybe, is what his name means. So Simon Peter is a fisherman, and he is a deep feeler. He has so much inside him. Some people call him impulsive, but sometimes impulsive just means he's so full of feelings that he's got to say something. He's got to do something, and that gets him in trouble. He says things, and Jesus has to correct him. He does things, and Jesus has to pull him back. He tries to turn the tables on Jesus one time, and it very aggressively corrects Jesus. That goes as well as you could imagine. He promises big and then doesn't deliver under pressure. Even on behalf of the Prince of Peace, cuts a guy's ear off at one point. So he's sort of a mess. That's why I like him. He's really a mess. I find that remarkable, that Simon Peter is a mess, because he's with Jesus every hour for years. Almost like you can be literally part of the Jesus conversation, literally having a good seat at the Jesus table, and still be missing the point on all the most important stuff. Simon Peter is in the presence of Jesus, but he gets stuck in his patterns, which teaches me that you can know all about Jesus. You can sit and have a meal with Jesus. You can quote scripture up and down. You can take all the cuss words out of your vocabulary and make sure your kids never watch an R-rated movie and all that kind of thing, but still be stuck in reactionary patterns, still be stuck in your prejudices, still be locked into how you see the world and yourself and everything else. This is the way it is. You can be locked into all of that. There's a moment at the end of the Gospels where Jesus takes Simon Peter and some others up the mountain. It's called the Transfiguration, because Jesus starts radiating light in front of these three guys. And they believe that they're looking at Moses and Elijah on either side of Jesus. And Peter, so full of emotion, has to say and has to do. And he's like, let me build some tents. Let's memorialize this spot. And the most fascinating and most hilarious thing happens. It says, while Peter was still speaking, so he gets interrupted, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them. And from the cloud, a voice said, this is God's voice interrupting Peter, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased." God said that previously in the Old Testament about Israel. Now he's saying it about like the quintessential Israelite. "This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him." Simon Peter is present and willing and eager, but all his energies are being expended while being somebody who's not listening. I mean, think of all things to finally hear audibly the voice of the divine say, and it's shh. It's like there's a banner over all that Peter got wrong, and it reads, Peter was definitely part of the conversation, and he was close to Jesus, but he was never listening, and that was a problem. Simon Peter, he was not going to be able to take on the mantle of resurrection, resurrecting himself and the world around him, that way of talking about death coming to life and participating in that work. He wasn't going to be able to do that until he learned to live into his name and be a listener. So on to the second guy. Years later, there's this other guy named Paul. His Jewish name is Saul. His Greek buddies called him Paul. He also has a profound experience with the divine. And it's profound because it was mystical and it was fantastic. And he hears God's voice and he's blinded and he has to be helped by the people he was persecuting. And it's amazing. It's an amazing encounter with the Spirit of Christ. And his life is completely remapped in this scene. But it's also amazing because Paul was already on the God squad. He already knew how the world worked. He already knew what, right from wrong, and already knew all about God and God's thoughts and what people were like. He already knew the Bible forward and backward. And you can argue, well, he didn't quite know it yet. But if you would have argued that with Paul, you'd have lost that argument. And so he has this experience and then enters into this nearly decade-long transformation as this student of the very God that he used to so confidently teach about. And it just changed his mind, and it's changed his heart, not only about God, but it's changed his mind about Jesus. It's changed his mind and his heart about people and race and gender and everything. It's all in Paul's writings. And then he starts going out and telling people on these early missionary journeys. And one of the earliest ones is captured in the book of Acts, chapter 16. And one portion of it reads this way. They, Paul and all his traveling companions, they went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. Now think about this for a second. He and his crew are in a boat, they're sailing around, and let's go and tell people that the Messiah that they're waiting for has come, and that there's this whole other kingdom besides the empire. There's a whole other Lord besides Caesar. There's a whole other way of being, and we're invited into it. He's trying to do his thing, this good thing, the sense of calling that he has, and he can't do it for some reason. Imagine trying to do good, what you believe to be good, and the author of good is telling you, don't do that. And so, you could think, well, maybe they got blocked somehow from getting into Asia. And rather than, look stupid to other people, they just said, it was very clear that the Holy Spirit wasn't letting us in there. Maybe, what if it was that? Or what if Paul has just become a really good listener? What if Paul has this new sensitivity to divine whispers because he listens? That's the difference between who he used to be, knowledgeable, to now. He's learning to listen. Verse 7 continues, when they had come opposite Mysia, they attempted to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus, which is the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Jesus didn't allow them. So strike two. They're still trying to do good. They do a U-turn, and they still can't go where they're trying to go. In the next verse, so passing by Mysia, they went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision. He had a dream. There stood a man of Macedonia, pleading with him and saying, come over to Macedonia and help us. And when he had seen the vision, this is where Luke starts including himself, the author of the book of Acts is like, now I'm part of this, so he starts saying we immediately tried to cross over to Macedonia, being convinced that God had called us to proclaim the good news to them. So Macedonia is this huge province north of Greece in Jesus' day. This is where many converts to Judaism, or a form of it. A lot of Jews didn't like it because it didn't hold to all the rules. But many converts to a form of Judaism lived, intermingled with worshipers of other religions, worshipers of Mithras and Zeus, and literally in a very real way, Caesar himself. And he has this dream after being told if he was really listening, I don't want you to do this good thing that you're trying to do. Then he has a dream of a man from Macedonia, this huge occupied territory. Come help us. Which is interesting because it's not come say things to us. It's not send us a letter, send me a letter. It's this man, this vision of a man saying, I want you physically here with me to help. I want you to come and help. The way of Jesus, this is what it was called before, long before any other people called it Christianity, it was called the way, is embodied. It's present. It's an embodied, physical, present faith. Many of us thought Christianity was something prominently structured in a classroom, but it's actually supposed to be structured in the living of our lives, in our interactions, in our reality. So Paul is invited to be present. He's listening and detects a no, and listening and detects a no, and then is so tuned in that in his sleep he has this vision, and then they go to Macedonia, of all places. So verse 11 says they get there. We finally arrived at Philippi, which is a leading city of the district of Macedonia, and a Roman colony. There was a place of prayer by the river, and we sat down and spoke to the women who had gathered there. A certain woman named Lydia, a worshiper of God, was listening to us. She's listening. She was from the city of Thyatira and a dealer in purple cloth. That's a big deal. Purple and blue are hard colors to come by. You have to get it out of a sea snail. So it's expensive stuff. She's a dealer in purple cloth. The Lord opened her heart to listen eagerly. Opened her heart to listen. It's really the default setting of a human heart. We bury it underneath a lot of talking, a lot of thinking and worrying and regretting. But the default setting of the human heart is listening. The Lord opened her heart to listen eagerly to what was said by Paul. When she and her household were baptized, she urged us, saying, "If you've judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come and stay at my home." And Paul says, "Well, you've prevailed upon us. Sure, we'll come over." Gets to Macedonia, hangs out in Philippi for a few days, and then meets Lydia, which begs so many great questions about Paul's vision about a man asking for help. And the person that they're on record as finally encountering there in Macedonia is a group of women led by a woman named Lydia. Because even when you're listening, and listening well, you're still going to be surprised. The Spirit of God is still going to surprise you about the actual shape of reality. And so Lydia listened, and she and her family joined the way, the body of lovers and helpers and peace and justice makers, gently but boldly establishing heaven's kingdom on earth. Lydia, by the way, is the first European to join the way. This is how the news, the story of Jesus, starts to spread into Europe. It's through this woman. Paul doesn't know what to do, so he goes and sails forward as a listener to where help is needed. He doesn't wait for clarity to do things, nor does he move recklessly, assuming that he already knows best. He stays in motion as a listening helper. And this is the pattern for people who want to join the Spirit of Jesus. Listening and following, and then listening and following, and then listening and following, being surprised all along the way. The invitation is not to believe something and become a defender of that belief. It's an invitation to move in step with the Spirit into surprising and uncomfortable and beautiful places as a listening helper. And frankly, as we look at our very complicated and hurting world right now, we might feel overwhelmed and frustrated. And I have heard this exact sentiment several times in the last few weeks and months. And right now, I don't think very many of us would argue that racism, systemic injustice, bigotry, white supremacy, that those are non-issues. I don't think very many of us would argue that, but I think some of us might be tempted to argue about to what extent they're issues, or what should actually be done, and who should be doing it, and who's telling the most truth, and frankly, how much should the church talk about it before we move on to other matters? But see, here's the thing. We're living in an apocalypse. And I mean that quite literally and quite biblically. We're living through an apocalypse. The word apocalypse means unveiling. It's the revealing of a new age. It's not really about the end of things as much as it's about the beginning or the birth of something else. It's the revealing of a new age trying to be born. We are never going to be like we were when we pass all the way through this moment. I think we realize that. And the unveiling and the rebirthing that's happening right now, it's an uncomfortable invitation, but it's an invitation no less for the people of the way to live into something better than before, humbly and boldly, listening and teachable. And things will really only improve to the extent that those of us with power and influence and voice are consistently humble, listening helpers. If you are a follower of Jesus in the way, in any measure, maybe you're in distant orbit of some of those descriptors. You maybe feel a little weird when it gets to some of those specific labels about your spirituality, whatever. In any measure, if you're a follower of Jesus, you are invited to listen and to move on behalf of others centering love, to be a listening helper. And so I'd like to outline a few ways of being in an overwhelming time that I'm convinced are in step with the moment we find ourselves in. Some things to consider for this moment. I want to remind us to have the peace that we're offering. To actually have the peace that we're offering. To take seriously the work of our own health and peace. I've been told so many times, and it's happening to me here and there too, I can't sleep lately. A few nights ago, 2 nights in a row, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Had trouble getting back to sleep. My body just felt tight. I've been being told, lots of people say my shoulders hurt, my neck hurts, I can't sleep. I'm angry constantly. I'm worried constantly. I'm all wrapped around the ankle, the axle, wrapped around the ankle. That's probably a way of addressing an injury. I'm just tense all the time. I'm hearing this constantly right now. I just want to remind us, you can't work for peace that you don't have. You can't give peace you ain't got. Thich Nhat Hanh said something, I love this. He said, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Peace, in other words, isn't the ends. It's the means. It describes how we go, not where we're going. Have the peace you're offering. Take seriously the work of your own health and your own peace. That means exercise. I'm not a doctor. You should probably go see. I think I'm supposed to do the boilerplate that you're supposed to talk to your physician before starting an exercise regimen. But many of us, if you're able, we got to walk off the tension. We got to move off the tension. If we're able to, we've got to do that. We got to let our body, or at least our breathing, regulate all that unused energy that builds up, all that worry and angst that builds up. We've got to do something with that in our bodies if we're able to. I wish I could just wave a wand and everybody would get moving outside every day. I know that not all of us can do that, but if you can, please do that. That is one of the main ways, if you're able to be a person of peace, is to let all that energy go somewhere. And then rest. And I know work and everything right now is just so confusing. And maybe rest is like what some of us have decided we'll do this fall sometime, maybe. But to rest, don't feel guilty about rhythmically checking out and resting. Middle of the day, a couple times a day, you don't have to be on your screens right before bed. In fact, it's recommended that you don't. And get some sleep. Try several nights in a row to get some good sleep. Don't feel guilty about rhythmically checking out also from the tsunami of news that's frankly designed to provoke us more than inform us. I hope that that's been made clear to you at this point in your life. We take in, a lot of us, we take in a lot of news under the guise of I want to stay informed. But the stress that being informed about all of these things causes some of our bodies, we are being informed past our capacity to act, past our capacity to respond. It's too much. It's aimed at our amygdala, and we feel all this tension and angst, like I'm supposed to do something with this. That's why so many of us go on social media and just start ranting. It's like this has to go somewhere to rhythmically check out from that tsunami of bad news that's designed to provoke you. Don't feel guilty about that. We have to do that. If you're a news junkie, get the info that you need and then log off. You don't have to start your day there. You don't have to end your day there. Get some news and then log off. Because listen, we've got to let God so love the world so that we can get busy loving our neighbors. Too many of us, what we've tried to do is love the world and we ignore our neighbor. So yes, there is a privilege in being able to log off of other people's realities. Some people don't get to log off. It's not the news, it's their life. And I do understand that as I say that. But if you have the privilege, take that privilege is what I'm saying. Soldiers on the front line in combat, they still stop and play cards and eat and rest every single time that they can do that. We're not designed to carry all the woe of the world in one body. It's deadly. And so rest, exercise, and then rest, body and mind. Here's something else. Here's another point. Let's continue to ask ourselves if we are more part of a belief or a way. I hope that semantical trick doesn't frustrate you because I intend it to be meaningful. A belief is really all head, but a way, well, that's our everything. That's our thoughts and our feelings and then our measurable lived life. Let's ask ourselves, are we more part of a belief, like a set of convictions, or like a way that other people could look at and say, I think I've got a sense of what they believe because I can see it, I can sense it. Think of it this way, especially in the context that we find ourselves in right now. The opposite of evil action isn't inaction. It would be measurable good. Like the opposite of the KKK isn't not being in the KKK. That'd be a great start. The opposite of harassment and bigotry toward vulnerable groups isn't not harassing them. That'd be a great start. The opposite of starving a child isn't refusing to take their food from them, although that would be a great start. The opposite of bad action is never just inaction. This is why I think so many problems plague us in our society, is that many of us were taught somehow that being good means staying out of trouble. But it's so much more than what you're not doing. Being good is measured by the actions that we take, not the actions that we don't take. To stay out of trouble might mean, as John Lewis always puts it, to get into good trouble. You remember the Samaritan parable that Jesus tells? There's a priest and a Levite that walk around a beaten man. And the way he tells it is that the two guys who do nothing are doing something bad. They're not being neighborly. They're part of the problem because of their absence of action. We are invited to ask this question: do I just have a set of beliefs, or are my beliefs a way? This idea overwhelms some of us because we have this false idea that in order to really do something that matters, that means we have to start a nonprofit or become a saint or end up in somebody's spiritual hall of fame. This is not the case. Most of us, by living the way, will still be left in obscurity. It will just be the way that we live. It'll be measurable. Jesus always talks about fruit. What kind of fruit do you produce? Not what kind of tree do you demand that you be seen as, but what actual fruit comes from your branches. It's the way that we're invited to live, decisively and intentionally and measurably. And so, but it doesn't have to be big. I like how Therese de Lisieux, I hope I'm saying that right, I like how she put it. She said, miss no single opportunity of making some small sacrifice. Here, by a smiling look. There, by a kindly word. Always doing the smallest right and doing it all for love. Here's another. Educate yourself. Educate yourself, which assumes you're not educated. So I don't mean that condescendingly, and I certainly don't mean to say that I have the education you should have. Let's educate ourselves. Let's not start doing things if we don't understand the issues. Who needs help and who is already helping? Can I join them? I think probably there's a Macedonian man speaking to us every day. But we're so stricken with self-doubt and so distracted and convinced that it has to be big or that we already know everything. I think that we're missing it. And so what if we educated ourselves? Where could we be this time next year on things that we've learned? What books are we reading? Whose voices are we listening to? Is it the same voices over and over and over? Are all of your theologians, are they all German and European? Are all your philosophers Greek? Is everybody that you listen to about economics, it's the same 2 or 3 people? Many people have expressed in the last couple of weeks that they want to know and they want to read, they want to listen to some voices where race and inequity, justice, white supremacy, all of that. Lots of people have told us they want some resources on that. And some people have said they want to spend the next several months or even years finally just learning what they've never taken the time to learn before. And so I want you to know, we've as Jonathan said earlier, we've posted some really great anti-racism resources. And I think a lot of them would be a great place for a lot of us to start. If you want to become more informed, more equipped on how to be helpful, there's some really great resources there. So this list of resources, you can find it at crosspoint.org/resources. There are websites, podcasts, books, TED Talks, videos, movies. It's a living document too, so we'll be adding to it in weeks and months to come. And I sincerely ask this of us, committed to being listening helpers, that we would lean into the way like never before and engage with these resources this week, that we would start this week, that we would be just consummate students, disciples, that we would be pro-listener, that even those of us that are like, I really think I know a lot about this, that we would dive in to this and just gorge ourselves on the voices and the perspectives of those that we may have grown used to leaving in the periphery, that we would listen to them. And so connecting to educating ourselves, here's a final thought. I'm sure there are more than these thoughts, but I want to give us a couple of concrete steps. So here's my final one. Commit actively to being truly a listening helper, to really think about yourself this way. I am a listening helper. That's how my faith, the big part of the way, is defined, as I'm always listening and then helping based on what I think I'm hearing. Not just a helper, because acting without listening, well, you could create more problems. And not listening without helping, because we don't want to reduce our collective experience to more academics and theories. To be a listening helper, and the Spirit of Christ who filled Paul's sails to move and to listen. I want to really begin thinking of ourselves as listening helpers. And this is true for everything, but of course I want to apply it particularly to race, because it requires it and it deserves it. And I do so as a white man, speaking primarily in this moment to my white siblings. This is tricky, because some of us think that we have it. We've heard this so many times. A lot of us, we think that there's nothing left to learn, that we have it. And I just want to remind us that the role of a disciple, a student, is perpetual. We've never fully got it. Jesus followers don't ever become non-students. You and I may very well be part of the problem when we say, no, I got it. I'm woke. This is now somebody else's problem. We can be part of the problem when we stop listening because we think there's nothing left to learn. Peter famously got himself into trouble every time he stopped listening and started talking about what other people needed to start doing. And I want you to know, I get this. It's easy to think that we know more than we know. It's easy to be defensive at the idea that we don't. Like, it feels like somebody's putting something on us or taking something from us when they point out that we don't know what we think that we know, or they try to tell us of a better way. It's difficult. And not knowing contributes to the problem, and we're being told that we're contributing to the problem. And we immediately, some of us, we tense up and we think, wait a minute, I'm being lumped in with the villains. Because only villains don't know that. Only villains would benefit from racism. Only villains would think and feel those things. And we suddenly go from being hearing to demanding to be heard. And it places us right back in the center again, which is where all the problems start. When somebody places themselves in the center. And trust me, I know this firsthand. I know this. I just learned just a couple days ago at the hands of my 14-year-old son that Hall & Oates are not singing your kiss is on my lips. They're saying list. The word list is in the title. Your kiss is on my list is the name of the song, and I totally missed that. My whole life I thought they were saying lips because that's where you kiss. The lyrics even say, because your kiss is on my list of the best things in life. I missed it. Like, you don't rank things on your lips. And I didn't see it. I was really unwilling to see it. When he pointed it out to me, I was like, no way. I felt threatened. No way. You're wrong. You're young. You know what you're talking about. That song that's from my generation. It's so familiar to me, and I've been singing it this way for so long. That makes me right. No, it can't be true. I've always sang lips. So if I can do that with Hall & Oates, imagine what we might be able to do when I'm taught there's no such meaningful category as black on black crime. Now, we already kind of know that, if we'd be honest, because nobody ever talks about white on white crime. Or that I might unconsciously believe that being a white man is the default state of what American means. And that to be and to think and believe like me and to be named like me, that's what it means to be normal. How am I going to react when it's pointed out to me that I have gotten to this point in my life compared to others, black and brown others? That I've gotten to that point, not just as a feature of my hard work, I've worked pretty hard, but as a feature of my culture being tailored to me. How am I going to react to that? What will I do with these ideas if I can so easily put such rock-hard defenses in place when I hear something that changes my sense of myself, or I believe falsely paints me as a villain, and then I have to put myself in the center and defend my name? Listening. Really opening ourselves to hear and rehear, centering voices that we may not have centered, listening to experiences that we've learned to ignore or dismiss, or even explain away or even judge, it is very uncomfortable, because we might find that we weren't only wrong, we contributed to the problem we thought we understood. But here's the encouragement. The trajectory for the listening helper caught up in the way of Jesus' death and resurrection, the trajectory of that is death and resurrection. Old ideas and behaviors, old narrownesses that we thought were expansive and informed and enlightened, all of that dies in the light of Christ's truth and peace and love. Death and resurrection. They become exposed for their fallacy, which is dreadful and uncomfortable and hard. But then resurrection comes, which isn't just something that happens to us individually and then it also happens to us later, like after we die. It's a way of being in this world today. It's what Jesus has packed into, follow me. It's what Jesus was saying to Peter and to Paul, and is what he's saying to all of us. Follow me and listen. Shh, listen. Perpetual students, listen and move with me humbly and compassionately and participate in the apocalyptic, uncomfortable beauty of old becoming new. Have the peace you want for the world. Say yes to living this way daily. Educate yourself like never before with voices that you've never listened to before if necessary. And let us all be helpers who are eager to hear more than be heard. And may the world heal.
Welcome home.